This report is called Who is My Neighbor? A Church Response to Social Disorder Linked to Gangs, Drugs, Guns and Knives. It's on the CTE website if you want to access it. Recently, Dr. Carver Anderson has done a piece of work which has been, I think it's available online, the Commission on Gangs and Violence, uniting to improve safety. And I think we need to read these reports, hear what people have researched and have found. I know we know it ourselves, and build on the findings that have already been there. And if I may just quickly say, I spoke to a young person in the week just coming into today and asked him, what did he think was the problem? 17 years old, with young people and guns and knives and so forth. And his point was that he thinks a lot of young people feel excluded from society in a significant way, which goes back, I think, to the point that Nathan was making. And he talked about how there is insufficient youth provision, which goes back to the point that I think Councillor Sharon was just making, that churches could do a really good thing by opening up our spaces. The very final thing is, can I say, my personal view is, I did some research the other day, desk research, looking at crime rates in cities around the world. And what's happening here in England is child's play compared to what's happening in some countries in Latin America, for example. And the root of it, you look at them, they're nearly all former colonies of Europe who have been left having the resources sucked out of them, out of those countries, and those countries are poor. Poverty, too many black people, in my view, are poor in this country. And one of the biggest needs we have is to pull ourselves, our communities, up politically and economically. We've done a good job with the churches, but I think we need to pull up ourselves financially, economically. We need to think long term. We need to buy insurance policies so when we're dead, our family get £100,000 without having to do very much. We need to build generational wealth in our community, and by so doing, remove more of our people out of the danger zones for where these things are happening.
Thank you for that, Joe. I know you want to come in, Councillor Tep, but I have a question here from the floor, or a point from the floor, and one over in the back there.
Just a few things I want to mention. Derek was talking about going back to parents. Something I always say is that the government actually take away the parenting rights from the parents and try to put it into the school system. Even take away some of the structure out of the school system, the discipline. And so what you have is a generation undisciplined. And so it has allowed them to run wild. Because when we were growing up, we were disciplined. And there's nothing wrong with some decent, right way of correcting you. There's nothing wrong with that. And the Bible's never wrong. It said, train up the child in which way they should grow. So when they get older, they should not depart from that path. That is serious. But also, the knife crime, it is not something new. It's been around even from before I was even born. But I want to just pose this question. Could it be then that some of these knife crimes that we see is because young people don't feel safe? Because they don't feel safe when they go out on the road, so they feel they need to bring protection. And could it be then that they're caught in a situation that they feel they have to defend themselves? And in that case, someone get hurt. And not intentionally to do it, but because they carry the weapon, they use it.
Thank you for your point. One at the back there, then I'll come back to the panel.
Good evening. Hi.
Okay, hello.
Hi. My point is more about in terms of what are we doing to open up to the community, and I think somebody already said it over there. Sorry, it's my phone around. So the neighbours are few, and I'm thinking if the amount of people that are in this room today were actually outside doing something in our local communities, I really do believe that we've been making an impact. And I really do applaud that we are having this meeting. But it's where are we going from here, and it's really important to know what the next steps are going to be.
Thank you for that, yeah. It is, we are conscious that again, we can chat, but if we're not going to do any action with it. So we've had our young people feeling excluded, that's why they're carrying a knife. Are we actually going to do anything after we chat? Last point before I come back to the panel.
Okay, thank you. As someone who may or may not fit the definition of young, depending on how old you are, probably slightly older than the millennial generation. This is my background: single parent household, sexually abused first at 4, then at 8, and again at 12. Grew up poor, below the poverty line, was involved in both organized and unorganized street crime. I am an immigrant like Bishop. I came to the UK when I was roughly about 21. I have worked both in the corporate world at some of the highest levels, and now I'm a minister working in the community with this kind of scenario. So I want to bring back the words of a famous Greek philosopher, that the beginning of wisdom, you might see in the Bible, is the definition of terms. I've heard the word the church bandied around a lot today. And so the question is, what do we refer to as church? Do we refer to the people who went to theology and whose advertised service is to preach or give a homily? Do we refer to the charity commission structure whose objects say specifically on the advancement of religion for the public benefit? Now, my definition of the church simply is, for the Greek philosophers among us, the ecclesia, a group of believers interacting with each other and the voice of heaven in our community. If we understand that definition, then we realize that some of the things we're asking the quote-unquote church to do are being done by the church, just not by the service on a Sunday. So for instance, people like Nathan, people like Ashley, and anybody else, you are the church. You're working in the community. You are exponents of this thing we are proposing. Now, going back to the issue about gun crime and high crime and all those kind of things, one of the ways the church is supposed to be a benefit to society is creating a template for society to follow. Like we've heard, that template has been shredded, parental control removed, over sexualization of children at a very young age, societal family breakdowns, insensitizing young pregnancies and divorce and family breakup. So my question back to those of you who are Christians in the marketplace, and I am having this conversation in my local community with the council and other ministers, we had something like this similar, is how can we, as the quote-unquote classic church now, so the preachers, the service, how can we present to, or through you guys, in that sphere, the fact that we do have these answers, number one. Number two, can we create forums where you tell us specifically what your problems are and how you want us to cooperate, like we've heard today about the building staying open and things of that nature. So rather than the rhetoric, and in my opinion, sometimes irresponsible rhetoric, like I said, I gave my background for a reason. How can we constructively have that dialogue where we can give you the answers we think we have when we know what you want them to do?
Wow, thank you very much. There's a lot in there. Ashley, I don't know because I am conscious that I haven't heard from a feeling. There's one or two hands. We will do our utmost to get to you. Ashley?
I know we're short on time, so I'll make this answer very, very quick and brief. So Nathan, who spoke earlier, is a member of the Gangs Violence Commission, which was set up by the Commission and I in 2016 to tackle some of the issues related to gun crime and knife crime. We put £2 million into that agenda to really have a community-led approach to these issues. And quite simply, one of the things which I haven't had as a Commissioner of Services are churches come to me and say, we have this project, will you give us some money to do the work we are doing in our communities? The answer is here from me. If there are people in the church, in this church, or other churches that are further afield in both West Midlands, who have projects that they want to do, work with local people, let me know and let me see how I can assist, because it's all well and good talking about the church as a community, we're going to work together, but I recognise you need assistance. And our job and my job as a commissioner is to enable you to do the great work that you are doing. So the quick answer to your question is, I think there's this most certain role for you, and let me help you do the work you're doing.
So there's money there. Sharon, I know you want to come in. Can you say your point, and then I go to Felicia.
So part of my issues is around how to get some stuff from the churches. As a counsellor, I have a number of groups that contact me on a daily basis to tell me what they're doing and what they can do. And people say, you know, we want to do this, we want to do that. And one of the issues that we have as a community, and I'm talking as part of the community, it's called ego. It's called ego. And the problem with this is, I sit in meetings with politicians and senior officers, and I see people from my own community come in and rubbish the work of other people in the community, talk about, well, you should be funding us, or they want to step forward, or you say, well, somebody else is doing that, so why don't you join forces? Well, yeah, that's what I want to do, but I don't want to do it with them because we want to do it by ourselves. And everybody wants to lead something by themselves, when actually we need to learn how to be served again and work together and support. So for me, I mean, Joe has me in his inbox on a regular basis going on about this with the church. I would love to work with churches, and I think we need to put together a strategic plan with themes that looks at who is best to deliver what. If someone's better at working with young people, allow them to take that space. If someone's good at being motivational, allow them to take that space. Who's dealing with skills, who's dealing with families, and let's put together a proper strategy so that once we put the strategies together, we know who can go to Ashley with that bid that's going to be strong enough for those that are sitting around the table that actually, you know, make the decisions, to make a decision and award the bids to us. That's what we need to do. Drop ego, come together, build a strategy.
And I'm going in light of that, I know, and in light of that as well, put the people who genuinely can do it. There's people who are the workers, and there's ones who can be the speakers. Felicia, affiliate, and Wayne, I do want to get you in, so Felicia, quickly for me, thank you.
One of the drivers that are perpetuating knife crime is this rise of what's called drill music. I'm not sure who's aware of it, but it's a strain of hip-hop music, and it promotes violence and killing each other, glamorize it, sexualize it, whatever you want to call it. What do you think what do you think the response should be to that? Should it be made illegal? What can not only the church do about it, but what can local and national government do about it to respond to this?
So I know that a few months ago we heard that on the news that the police had stormed particular video shoots around drill music, and YouTube were trying to ban it. Ophelia, you're one of the younger people, again, you're probably around a lot of people who listen to that music, who want to dress a particular way to represent how they're feeling in using that music. What's your thoughts on that question and on the general question, and then Wayne, I'll come to you after.
Surrounding drill music, the main thing that attracts young people to listen to drill music is simply the beat. It's simply having that bop, having that beat, and then after that comes the lyrics. Knowing the lyrics then just makes you more popular, makes you more cool, you know what's popping at that time. I think making it illegal will cause some uproar, because you're taking away what they feel their right to. They will still find a way to try and listen to it. It will still be produced. Studios will still allow it. As we can do everything to try and stop it, but it will still happen. I think in terms of going back to Pastor French's comment around feeling protected, a lot of the time now, people feel they have to stay in their city, stay in their section. They can't leave a certain area because of, if they leave that, they will be either intimidated or they will be feel threatened or pressured. The two main questions are that young black males are approached with are, where are you from and who do you rep? Simply that. If you say simply the wrong area, the wrong city code, automatically you can easily be stabbed in that moment, and you can be put on the spot in terms of, I'm just living Great Power, or just living Poma, or just in the Solihull, I'm not a part of this culture, I don't know anything about it, but simply because of your area, where you live, you are easily a target. So I feel like predominantly a lot of young males from the age of 14 are carrying weapons for that, to feel protected, or they are easily catching Uber, catching rides, and not going on public transport because of fear.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose, the key thing. I want to come back to that, because I know there may be others who say that's again, but Bishop Wayne, I'm conscious that I haven't heard from you. Again, an element of an international link, but just on what you've heard around knife crime, black on black crime, etc.
I think when it comes to the aspect of crime, we can most probably give you all the stats. It's coming from South Africa. Just last year, 20,300 young people were stabbed to death, just in one location alone. We come from a crime capital amongst 180 countries that did a survey. South Africa ranked 73 in the world. Now, just to answer Kalicia's question, and I'm going to be upfront by stating that my first priority is not to be a bishop or a pastor. My first priority is to be a father. And that's where the problem is. In my home, where I pay the rent, where I buy the phone, where I buy the clothes, I control that environment. That's where we're losing some of the young people. Because my son, I've got 2 daughters. Most of them, Bishop knows them and know that they come from a good home. I am the priest of my home. That's where we've lost some of our children, is that we don't watch what they do. I go in my children's rooms, I check what they wear. You won't go out dressed like that. You won't listen to that kind of music, because I'm training you up for where you're supposed to go. And if you can have parents, fathers, you can clap your hands, it's a good session, clap your hands. Fathers and mothers should take the responsibility, but we're also trying to be hip. We're trying to be friends with our kids. We're trying to be cool like that. That does not live in my world, because I'm raising up my children for that world out there that's not going to do them favors. And so I've got to put the discipline in the home. Because your friend has got nothing to do with the community, it's got nothing to do with the schools, got nothing to do with what government is doing. In my home, I'm the law, baby.
Listen, very passionate. I like that love. I'm the law, baby. One comment. I know you spoke before, but yes, very briefly.
I just want to add to knife crime. Young people need to know. You have to guard your mind. They need to be taught. Guard your mind. Your mind is a gateway. And if you guard your thoughts, everything starts from a thought. So if you get the words in, and then if you act it out, it becomes a habit. Then you act out the habit, it becomes a occupation. So if you educate them to guard their thoughts, listen to these lyrics. The government have a right to ban certain music with their lyrics. If the lyrics is going to educate you to come into be a criminal, they need to be banned.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And a point here from Augustus, because we are coming to the end of our time together, but if we can just quickly get Augustus in, thank you.
My name is Augustus Stewart. I'm a motivational speaker, and also I'm the leader of St. Nicholas Free Ministries. It's 2 quick points. The young lady spoke about drill music. There's been a study that's been done, and I can guarantee you this, that a lot of people, if you go in your homes, a lot of your young people have got games. And one of the issues that has become is the games that a lot of our young people are playing. They're playing games that are violent, that have knives, that have guns in them, and they're sitting there, they probably come home after school, and they're on that game for 8-9 hours, and it's pure violence. And what's happening now is that thing has actually now been lived out on the street, because there's something now that's called the point system, which is a game where if you stab someone in the head, you get 50 points. If you stab someone in the leg, you get 20 points. So we have to come back to the place of looking what's in our home and what we're giving to our children. Because if our kids are playing a game and they're now acting at that game on the street, then we are the cause for what is happening in our community.
Thank you very much.
Secondly, I want to say this. Yeah. Scripture says that we have 10,000 teachers, but we lack fathers. Now, I spoke to a lot of young men on the street, and they don't see our bishops, our pastors, or our male leaders. A lot of the young men on the street, they don't have the influence of fathers. They've got instructors in everything else. They've got drill music as instructors. They've got TV as instructors, but they don't have leaders who can be like Christ and be as a figure that can show them love, that can show them a right way, or that can guide in the way that they should go. So can I say this? Why are we not seeing more leaders from the church out on the streets that can stand as a figure and show them good instruction?
And not, I know Wayne, I literally got a minute and a half left. So Wayne, did you want to say a quick point, or in relation to that, especially about being on the streets? Because you said you're the priest in your home. What about being a priest on the streets?
I think those that know me know what kind of background I come from. I took Bishop when Bishop was in South Africa a while ago, where a young lad who was 4 years old, 3 years old, his mom strapped him into the car, and while she was strapping him, the hijackers came and hijacked him. And when they drove off with the car, they didn't realize the baby was in the back. And so the door flew open, whatever you want to call it, and the baby was hanging out of the door, and they dragged him hanging out of the car for a few kilometers and actually died. And Bishop had to do, I think Bishop did the unveiling of the tombstone of this young lad. One thing that we live by in the area where I come from, which is gang infested, I have a brother who has been in prison from the age of 9 years old up till 12. He's still in prison. He's serving a prison sentence for over 29 years. He's been in prison. The one thing that drove me was the fact that I'm not afraid. It's not my title that shows love. It is the individual that shows love. And I will tell you, I've gone up into gangs, I've been shot at, our church has been criticized. Our church, with no lie, is packed with all of them, all the gang members, one there, rival gangs that are sitting in the same church. I've had hijackers, cash in transit, heists, you name all of them, all the kind of crimes, rapists. There's a young lad in our church who's 25 years old, has killed over 9 people already. 9 people, shot them, spoke to Bishop counseled them. These are the realities. But you need to, young men, you need to have a man that is not afraid. We go into the slums, we go into their homes, because that's the reflection of God's love, is that we go to where they are.
Thank you very much. So, friends, we have got, unfortunately, we're out of time. I apologise that I know you were waiting, I'm so sorry, but we are out of time. It also does give us an opportunity to continue some of this conversation whilst we're sitting here amongst friends, and to make those connections, and to give you an opportunity as well to probably speak to one or two of the panellists that we've had. Can I say thank you again to the team behind Loud 360 for doing this town hall experience, a question time, a panel where we can at least we've had the conversations, I know, but I think a key thing that comes from this is an action. What is the action that's now going to follow from all of you being here, including us as well, to make sure we do something and it's not left until we have another one next year. Can I say thanks to the panelists then? To my left, to Derek Campbell, thank you very much, Eric. Ashley Bertie, Assistant Deputy and Crime Commissioner, Councillor Sharon Thompson, Ophelia Gale, Bishop Joe Aldridge, and Bishop Wayne. Let me make sure I say it, but I don't get this wrong. We're gonna Balikistin. Have I got the wrong Kistin? Nelly? Balikistan. Thank you very much, Bishop. Thank you very much. So I appreciate your time this evening. Those who didn't get to ask a question, apologies for that, but we are on a schedule. Again, please do share if you've been following some on social media. Share it appropriately on the social media, Twitter, Instagram, or as I've been told by the millennials, is Gram or Insta. So best to share it on Insta, because you know how it's popping, you know what I'm saying? Just to get a little bit of the street vernacular in. But please do so. Of course, this week as such until the 2nd, are you celebrating and doing various things? So New Jerusalem Apostolic Church will be doing various events and venues over these next coming days. Thank you for your support that you've shown for this evening. Please do continue the conversation and be practical in what you actually want to do. And one of the key things I've picked up is that Ashley is wanting people to come forward with their solution. There's £2 million there that can be spent. But for those of us who are of faith, the key thing that we know is that we need to stand on the foundation of the word and to go to God and ask him for his guidance, for the Holy Spirit to give us the direction. We can do a lot of this out of emotion, and that's where, as Joe, you were saying earlier, sometimes that gets carried away and is misplaced. Let us be really focused and clear and ask for that genuine direction from the Holy Spirit. I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you, everybody. I'm Nikki Tappan.
Can we give our esteemed panel and our whole speaking order a round of applause? And I'm going to ask our Bishop Hugh Smith, our presiding bishop, to address it. I'll come back to you before we finish. We apologise that we've gone a little over time. But can you be upstanding, please, as we welcome in the UK our Bishop Hugh D. Smith. Thank you very much. Thank you.
First, commend Bishop Brooks and the team for convening us with such a wonderful conversation. Thank God for all of the panelists, hosts, in addressing this subject. And my assignment is to give a review and give a little input as to my perspective on some of these things. I'm from the US, Metro Detroit, where these problems, as you said, are exaggerated to say the least. I've experienced several sessions like this where we come together. We've led a lot of these things. We've worked with several political leaders and government officials and social activists in this arduous task of trying to remedy some of these difficult social issues. And I've come to a place where I think we have to have a two-pronged approach to some of these things. One, as we've heard today, we have to deal with the present emergency. This is what we heard a great deal of conversation around what's in our face, the gang violence, the homeless condition that you talked about, as well as the mental health concerns. And just on that note, sidebar, I've spent years, I used to work at the psychiatric hospital, I've spent years, even in my own ministry, addressing mental health concerns. And one of the things we're doing to destigmatize that within the ranks of the church is, especially among clergy, is to identify really what the gospel has to say about it. The Bible is very clear. We are a spirit, a pneuma, we're a soul, psyche, we're a body. And the Bible addresses all of that. And so the gospel has to be presented in a holistic way. So those who pigeonhole the church exclusively to its salvation message for the spirit, to me, has missed the full gospel. And so I think clergy needs to be better equipped to communicate the word to all aspects of the human being. And if there's a need to bring in others who are more skilled in unpacking certain areas, there needs to be a collaboration between the two. However, I've seen, well, let me just say this, in our local assembly, we have several counselors and people with that background, and we put teams around people that include some prophetic people, some people who understand the spirit, some that understand the social side, but we're creating a language all of our own. I think that's one of the things that we need to do. There needs to be a collaborative effort of so-called professional people who understand theological concepts, theological people who understand some of the counseling concepts, and find a way to create one language that can allow it to be a smooth, seamless kind of work, as opposed to pitting the two groups against each other. I think that's dangerous.
But the two-pronged approach that I see that we need to consider has to do with what's creating the conditions for the emergencies that we are facing. I don't think there's a mother here whose child that may have a fever will spend all of her efforts in getting a cold towel and putting it on the child's head. I think that's part of what the mother may do to try to reduce the temperature. But as we know, the fever is an alarm, an indicator of something else that's beneath the surface that is present. And so the violence in the community is not just something we need to try to reduce from an external perspective. More jails, conversations with people, that's helped. It helps in the immediate thing. But we have to ask the question, what's producing the violence? Anytime you see an upheaval in a community, there's a reason for upheaval. There's a reason that there's black on black crime in Chicago that's out of control, in Detroit where I'm from, that's out of control. There's a reason. Put people in a certain neighborhood, you take away certain things from them, you can create the perfect condition for some of the things that are happening. If we don't look at the reasons and ask the right kinds of questions, I think we'll be trying to deal with the fruit that's on the tree and never address the root that's causing the problems. And I'm going to talk a little bit about something. Jesus said the axe was laid to the root of the tree and not the fruit. But we have to deal with the fruit because it's in our face. So again, we're not dismissing what I call mercy ministries. You see a little baby in a basket in a crocodile-infested river. Most of us would move with compassion to jump in there and risk our lives to save the baby. But at some point, you got to ask the question, who's putting the children in the river? Church typically has developed rescue children out of the river crocodile ministries or something. Or some kind of ministry that deals with the issue at hand and not address what I think are systemic conditions that create the conditions for these behaviors. Believe it or not, there are people in smoke-filled rooms making decisions right now about who's going to die somewhere across the world at a certain time this evening. There'll be a lot of propaganda in between, but it'll produce that outcome. If you look right here in the UK, there's about, what was the stat? I think it was $8.4 billion are contributed to the GDP of this nation from the pharmaceutical industry. $8.4 billion. Now, if $8.4 billion is adding to the GDP of this nation's economy, then there may be someone interested in having children hooked on psychotropic prescription drugs. As young as 6 years old in this nation, children have been prescribed antidepressants. Whereas I heard the gentleman at the end say, police officer minister at the end of the table talked about how the families were put together and how we handled these problems differently years ago. But then you talked about how the family's been unraveled and dismantled. My question to you is, are some of these things part of the plan too? Is there an agenda before the agenda? Before the agenda? Before the agenda. If you don't get called to the meeting where the real decisions are being made, then you could even be a part of the agenda and assigned to do a task and try to fix the fruit of the tree that could be an exercise in futility that keeps us busy for the rest of our lives trying to solve a problem that's unsolvable. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that there are nefarious groups and people that have great power that are engineering certain things, certain communities, certain societies. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's the only area we need to consider, but we've got to find out who's putting these babies in the river and what is creating this continual condition. The doctor here mentioned about the systemic race conditions around the world. It's amazing to me that the problems we're facing, you're facing. Same issue: homelessness, violence, poverty, mental health, people separated by the pond all over the world, same issues. What is the agenda? What's really going on here? And until we can ask those kinds of questions and probe beneath the veil, I think we're going to be running around like a chicken with our head cut off trying to solve these problems, which is good work, but I've been doing this too long. I can't just spend the rest of my life trying to just fix something that's constantly breaking, fixing something that's constantly breaking. We'll do it, but now I'm at a place where I think we have to have a level of courage. I heard somebody say to speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when powers may retaliate back toward you. There's a thing called a deep state. There's a thing called shadow governments. There are people getting paid behind the scenes. There are people cutting deals to bring about a certain outcome. And if we are the church, we're the kingdom of God, if we represent the government of God, then we have to address some of these issues as well. And I think working on both sides, addressing the powers that be, speaking truth to power, as well as the immediate needs that are in our face, is part of the two-pronged approach that I have in my heart. Just a few minutes, a few observations. Everything we said here was good today, but you have to have people working on all fronts. On all fronts. You need the guy saying hi to a person that comes out of the door. You need somebody concerned about the music. You need all of it. But the church can become a surrogate community. A surrogate community. We have many sons in our house, in our church with no fathers, but we become fathers to them. We create social order, because many of them don't know anything about social structure and social order. We teach people at the very grassroots level how to function in society. At the same time, we're concerned about somebody who's trying to undo everything we do. The school system is not where people are being educated, they're being indoctrinated and programmed to think a certain kind of way. How many of our children have lost their salvation when they go to college or go to university? People are being trained to be opposite of everything that we believe. And if we don't have things in place to look at the larger picture, we'll be here. This vicious cycle over and over. And so all I can say is I'm committed to the process. Sounds like Wayne is committed. I love what he said. It does start with the family. In my house, that's how we did. But that's just one house. All the other homes are still there. One person can't do it all. I only have so much time on the earth. So we got to find a way to put what we're saying into somebody else and create systems and document ideology so we can build upon, as you have here, what was already done before us. All of this has to come into play. It's an eclectic kind of work. Okay, there's a silver bullet. I think it was there.
And when we shared with Bishop Brooks what we wanted to do with this conference, one of the things he said is that we wanted to be a talking shop. And you know, I work in corporate governance. I would say corporate governance is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. We're going to talk about some of the systems as a result of the conference. We're going to have a white paper which Chanel and Felicia mentioned to you earlier. And I dare not remind you of something that we started some time ago, which I've given Nathan an assignment to talk about, which is something we call the Forgotten War. So watch this space. So what we do with after today there's going to be more than a three-pronged approach. There's going to be something that looks at the systems vision. So I'm just going to ask Chantal, who's conference coordinator, just to give you an announcement, and also what we're going to do tomorrow with the young people. We're going to do a similar panel debate, but the audience will be the younger people, and we will be out there in the audience questioning and hearing what their views are. So without further ado, Chantal, just give us our...
Good evening and praise the Lord. Our sponsors for the conference include Nehemiah Housing Group, Trident, Faith, Life, and the Christian Institute. So we'd like to thank them for their sponsorship. As Elder Carl says, the debate will commence at 1:45 tomorrow, and that will be run by our youth. We will start here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the morning for prayer. And if you've registered your children for Kingdom Children or Kingdom Youth, we're asking that you take them to the relevant venues. So the youth will be at New Jerusalem. We want them to be there for 9:45 for a 10 o'clock start. And our Kingdom Children will be just up the road at number 60 Thomas Street. Again, if you can take them for 9:45, and they will start at 10 o'clock. We're asking on your way out this evening, if you would take a look at the exhibition stands that are downstairs in the foyer and the information that's provided there. Also, there is grab and go food that is available for you to purchase this evening. And also, could you help us by boosting the conference? And if you are posting on social media, again, we ask you to include the hashtags I am loud or hashtag Loud 2019. So if you're going on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, please include those hashtags. Good evening. You are dismissed.